Hello, it's KC7NYR. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to install Skywave Linux on a virtual machine. And I'm showing you this. This is because the screen capture program that I use to create these videos is called Simple Screen Recorder. Currently, I'm running what's called MX Linux. See with the mouse at the right-hand bottom of the page. This is a Debian-based operating system. So the first thing you want to do is, first of all, I've already pulled it up, but let's say you don't know what you're looking for. Just open up a browser and type in Skywave. And you can see I've already searched for it, in this case, Skywave Linux. And their web page is skywavelinux.com. Now I've already pulled it up. So here you go. Now you're on their main web page. You need to download what's called an ISO because this is how we're going to load it into the virtual machine rather than loading it and creating a CD, which you could do, and that would be useful if you're going to install that on a regular laptop or a desktop operating system outside of a virtual machine. In this particular video, I'm going to show you how to install it on a virtual machine. This is part 1 of 2, so let's get started. So you click on the direct download. That's where I usually go, and it gives you this particular website, Source Force, and it tells you where to get it. And you just click on this download here, and it will eventually start downloading. If you notice, it opened up in this window. Now, I'm not going to download this, but I wanted to show you. Open with, you want to hit Save File. The name of the virtual ISO or operating system, Skywave Linux 3.1.1.ISO, and the size, which is 1.8 gigs. You don't want to open with. You want to save the actual ISO onto your hard drive. Click OK. In this case, I already did it. Okay, so now your virtual machine or your actual virtual machine program needs to be started. I have a shortcut on mine, and but let's just, in this case, if you scroll down, this emblem I made for myself, VirtualBox. Now, for your use, we're going to do it a little bit different because I'm assuming you did not create this shortcut in the panel on the left-hand side. Okay, so you would click on this. This is actually the emblem for MX Linux if you are using MX Linux, but other systems could vary, so be aware of that. Within MX Linux 19, you'd go up to Accessories. Okay, and then in Accessories, then you would scroll down and you would find your VirtualBox program and launch it from here. So let's open it from here, because this is exactly what you're going to do. You can see I've already got a Manjaro Linux installed. That's great. But we're going to now install Skywave Linux. You go up to this Quick Start menu. Now notice this menu, if you go File and Machine, you'll see it's very similar. So they're giving you the shortcuts. For a new machine, you just click New. And here is where you want to name Skywave Linux. Now, I know that's a 64-bit system, so it actually is pretty smart, and it also knows. But let me explain further. First of all, you name the virtual machine. Number 2, the virtual machine folder. This is where your VirtualBox virtual machines is stored. The type of operating system is Linux, but in this case, it could be any one of these others, right? But we're going to leave it there. And version, it could also be different too. Look at all the different versions we have. But Skywave Linux is not in this. So I stuck with the basic one here, which is 64-bit. You're safe, okay? The next item to do, let me just drop this down. Whoops, I can't do that. I forgot I can't do that. So, okay, so that's my mistake. You cannot do that. You have to look this up. Sorry about that. I learn stuff all the time. Okay, so the next item you want to do is click Next. Here is the memory size. You want to select amount of memory. This is the RAM in megabytes allocated to the virtual machine. They recommend very minimal. Now, depending on how much RAM you have on your computer, I have 8 gigs. It shows a little more. You notice the red here, where my mouse is, and you notice green. I like to run my virtual machines just under the red. That way I know they're running about as fast as they can, or you can do around 4 gigs. But do 4 gigs is safe. So I go a little more, whatever. You could do as you please, but just don't go into the red. Stay within the green. And if you want it to run, snappy and fast, there you go. Okay, that's all there is to the memory size. Next, you go to the bottom, click Next. Here you have the hard disk. If you wish to add a virtual hard disk to a new machine, you can either create a new hard disk file or select one from another location using this folder. If you need a more complex storage setup, you can skip this step and make the changes to the machine once the machine is created. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep it simple. The recommended size is 8 gigs, which would be the virtual hard drive. We're going to leave this setting the same. Create a virtual hard disk now. Next. Hard disk file type. Please choose the type of file you would like to use for your new virtual hard disk. If you do not need to use it with other virtualization software, you can leave this setting unchanged. In this case, we don't. So we'll use VDI, VirtualBox Disk Image. Again, this is a very simplistic introductory video only. Go down, hit Next at the bottom. Storage of the physical hard drive. I always read this because there is a difference. I always select dynamically allocated. This is the hard disk file. Will only use space on your physical hard disk as it fills up to a maximum fixed size, although it will not shrink again automatically when the space on it is freed. Second is fixed. Hard disk file may take longer to create on some systems, but is often faster to use. Your choice. I choose dynamically allocated. Click Next. Now you'll see at the top file location and size. It'll show you where it's going to put it. If you want to change this particular VDI file, you can click here and it'll change the name and change the location. That's up to you. I leave it where it's supposed to be under the VirtualBox virtual machine file, and then it names the operating system next. So I'd leave that alone, okay? Now, most of my systems, like I said, you can go pretty big. I have a relatively small hard drive. I usually run mine, the minimum's 8. I still like a little more, just so it's run quicker. I run about 32. Again, this is your preference. It depends how big your hard drive is on your physical laptop or desktop. Remember, we're creating a virtual disk on the virtual machine, but it will take that space away from your physical hard drive, so be aware of that. Next, click Create. And there it is. You'll see Skywave Linux powered off. Now, what do I do now? Well, do you remember the file, the ISO that we downloaded? What we do is now click Start. And this is the next screen you're going to get. Now, if you had a CD disk already burnt, you'd click on the menu folder and you'd select your operating system. Excuse me, that's the way I'm going to do it. You can see Skywave Linux, but let me back that up a second. It shows empty. So this is actually the CD-ROM, and you can see the host is a DVD. That's my actual physical hard drive on this particular laptop. It's empty because there's not a disk in it. I want to make sure I clarify the difference between the two. In this case, we're going to use the folder option. Click that, and this is where my download files or ISOs are located. Okay? I'm going to select Skywave Linux 3.1.1.ISO size. You can see here, and you go down here and click Open. So now we have selected the location, and we want to start it. Now in this case, this is the actual installation, but you're starting it as you're not installing it. It's called a live CD. So let me back up and explain what this means. Most of the installations by Linux gives you an option either to select to install it directly to your disk or to run what's called a live CD. A live CD means that you do not actually install the operating system on your local disk. This is the way you can test drive Linux. Pretty slick. Okay, and now we've arrived at the screen. X out these two items and find out why it's doing what it's doing, and there it is. So you notice how it kind of flickered over to a login? Well, it's supposed to bypass that because we're on a live CD session, so it did work the way it's supposed to. Now at this point in time, let me show you a couple things. With a virtual machine, you'll see this window moves around, and then your regular computer is in the secondary background. If you try to open it up, it won't get any bigger. So just leave it like this. Now, from here, this is your opportunity to test drive Skywave Linux. Now, let me explain a couple things. At the very top menu, you'll see File, Machine, View, Input, Devices, and Help. This controls the actual virtual machine itself. As well, at the very bottom, you'll see all these different icons. For instance, if you click on it, sometimes it'll show or not show, or you right-click. What these are is the actual systems running. So if you hover, it's running this adapter NAT. It'll tell you the video memory, and you don't have to particularly open it, but it'll give you an opportunity to see what's going on. Here is the mouse settings. So normally you should not have to touch any of those settings. Okay, at the top, you'll see it's running the date. Pretty slick. Multiple desktops. Now this is the actual, below the gray line, this is the actual Linux live CD. So I haven't decided if I want to install it yet, just like you. You want to test drive it. So let's look at it first. So let's just take a quick look at the applications, the reason why it's so powerful. It comes also with other software, but it specializes in SDR software, which is software-defined radio. So a lot of the software that's required to run software-defined radio is already pre-installed. Okay. Now, if you look here, accessories shows chirp in here. What chirp is something a lot of amateur radio operators they program your radios with. It's already installed. So you don't have to go in and pre-configure any of this stuff. I'm not going to go through all this stuff, settings, but I'm going to show you quickly the applications. And of course, the WX, this is your weather satellite signals, education, graphics. Then you notice it's got ham radio. This is huge. We're going to come back to this because that's where we're going to spend most of our time because that's the reason for the video. You got your internet, which again gives you other stuff. You'll recognize FLDigi, GPredict, GQRX, which is software-defined radio receiver, Lantern, nice program, and QTEL, which is a Echolink client for those who like to run Echolink. Then it just goes on and on. It's a web SDR. This is if you do not have a dongle. You want to listen to software-defined radio. There it is. So you can see everything that Skywave Linux has to do with a specific software-defined radio and amateur radio, and it's fantastic. You have your regular Office suite, of course. You can install more. These are basics, right? You can install Libre if you want. Programming, all your Qt Creator, which I have not really delved in these yet. Sound and video, and system tools. And again, if you wanted to install something like LibreOffice, you just click here. That's add to remove software. Okay? Now let's go back to the top. Why we like Skywave Linux for ham radio. Cube, that's a software RTL SDR. That's what I have. I just ordered mine. And that's a software-defined dongle that you plug into your laptop. I'm going to experiment with this and make a documentation videos as I go. This here is your decoder for dump 1090. I have not used. FL Digi, this is the amateur radio sound card communication program. GQRX is another one that I'm using right now. That's how I listen to software-defined radio on my dongle. And then you have amateur radio weak signal operating. I have not used this. There's a lot I have not used, just so you know. And you have open web SDR interface. It also has subcarrier sound card. There's a ton here. QTEL, that's the Echo Link client for amateur radio operators. QT Radio, which I haven't really used, and this is also QT Radio for our RTL SDR devices with QT Radio. And then if you move down, you'll notice you'll see much more. Driver setting. This is your multi-channel communication monitor. That's the airband. You can listen to air traffic controllers on this. SDR trunk, which I have not experimented with yet. And it just goes on your web SDR. This is if you want to if you don't have a dongle, you'd use the web SDR to listen to software-defined radios on the internet. I used this as well before I got my dongles. And you have amateur radio weak signal operating, WSJTX, which I have not used again. So this is going to be fun experimenting all the different options. And you have to decode APT weather satellite signals as well. So you can see why this software is so important to amateur radio operators. Okay, with that said now, I didn't want to go in great detail, but I want to make sure I pointed out everything is pre-installed with software for Skywave Linux. All the software for amateur radio is pre-installed. So now I decided I like it. It's now time to install it. You'll see they give you an easy way to do it. You just double click here and it'll open up. Now I'm going to walk you through the installation process, how to install Skywave Linux on a virtual machine. Okay, so right here's pretty easy to see. We're going to select the language, hit continue. Preparing to install Skywave. Download updates while installing Skywave. This saves time after installation. Yes, click that. Install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi, hard drive, flash, MP. I always check this as well. Next, go down and hit continue. Okay, so it's preparing to install Skywave Linux. It's good to see this in real time because I'm running about 8 gigs of RAM on my laptop, but the virtual machine got right around 4 gigs. Okay, now this is important. Now you need to read every one of these because each one does something separate. But for simplicity, we're erasing the disk and installing Skywave. This will delete all the programs on an existing hard drive. Just remember that. You can also encrypt the new Skywave installation for security. We're going to not do that. And you can use LVM with the new Skywave installation. That's logical volume management. It allows taking snapshots and easier partitioning and resizing. Again, I'm not going to cover that in this video. Now, you also have an option to hit clicking something else. And what that does, this goes through the partitioning process, which I can show you, but we're going to keep it simple and easy because we're only installing this on a virtual machine. If we were installing it on a hard drive, we're going to make it a dual boot system, then you'd click something else. So let's check. Erase hard disk and install Skywave. Click install now. It tells you everything it's going to do. And I'll scroll it, get to the top. You can see if you continue changes listed below will be written to the disk. It also tells you here the actual disk location. The following partitions are going to be formatted, and they give you the ext4, which is the hard drive format, and then it also requires another partition called a swap file. Now, if you did this manually, you would have to create these yourself. This is why I'm showing you the easiest way to install it. And hit click next. So you'll see my little mouse turns into an hourglass. Now it gives us a map. Where are you? Well, I'm close enough to Los Angeles, so if you were somewhere else, you'd select a different part of the world. Click Continue. And I do this so you can see the mouse. And then here you get your keyboard layout. Anything other than English, select as you please. I'm selecting default English USA. And if you notice, I don't see the next button. So we slide that over. Do you notice how it just, you got to make sure you move that around. But it was too big for the screen. But it's working just fine. So slide it over, everything working fine, hit continue. Okay, so we're going to select a username. We're going to call myself KC7NYR. Now, you can leave it on VirtualBox. That's your choice. You can do anything here. I'm just going to make it 1. And then you pick a username and a password. Now, you can log in automatically. Generally, that's fine. Most people like a layer of security just in case. I don't recommend that. So I'm going to put a password in here. Right? Fair password. Now again, you could click login automatically, but because if something went sideways, Linux is fairly safe. Probably wouldn't be a problem, but I don't recommend it. Okay. And I'm not going to encrypt my home folder, but you have the option. But I am showing you require a password at login right here. And I'm not going to, you probably should encrypt your home folder. On a regular laptop, I would do this for security reasons. Click Next. But on a virtual machine and for this particular video, we're not going to do that. You notice that at the top of the page, it'll show you Install as a super user, meaning you're an admin here. And we will let the system install. And for the sake of time, I'll probably pause during parts of this, but I did want to show you part of it, how it looks. Now, right now it's copying the files. Different install managers look a little different, but a lot of them nowadays are looking very much the same. Once they copy the files, they'll give you other options that'll show up here. So we're going to go ahead and let this load, so I don't bore you to tears, until the files are copied and we go to the next step. Okay, I've returned and I want to show you the process of the installation. So I took a break because it took some time to copy the files. If you notice, it's got this cool little slide bar at the top. So let's go over this together. Welcome to Ubuntu. Fast, full new features. The latest version of Ubuntu makes computing easier than ever. Here are a few cool things to look at. So they give you something to read while it takes a while to install. All right. Say goodbye to searching the web for new software. With access to the Ubuntu software store, you can find and install new apps with ease. Just type in what you are looking for and you can explore it. So Skywave Linux is Ubuntu based. Okay, so now the installation is complete. This is what you're going to see. It says installation complete. Installation is finished. You can continue testing Skywave Linux, but until you restart your computer, any changes you make or documents you save will not be preserved. So this is your option now to continue testing, but I always say restart. So go ahead and restart now the virtual machine, and you'll get to see what it looks like to restart it. And you see at the bottom, it tells you installation is complete as well. Okay. So I want to show you all this. So hit restart. Okay, so now we restarted the virtual machine. I wanted to show you what it's doing. Okay, so interesting enough, it shows 2 passwords. I have no idea why it does that. It's done that before. Okay, so there's my username, KC7NYR, where my mouse is. Password, so let's try that. I'll put it in twice. There's probably a reason why. Enter. And now, this is actually the installed virtual machine. This is just like if you installed it on your home system, desktop, or laptop. So you notice the install directory is gone. This is something I like about Skywave Linux. So, okay, before I move on, you wonder why there's 2 desktops. That's an interesting question. So if you click on this one, it's different. Basically, this is if you wanted to have a desktop that you ran. You want to separate 2 systems. Let's say you want to do amateur radio on one and your home network or whatever or business on another. That's one way to do it. Okay, I don't use that. So here we are. That's what it looks like. So let's get started. A quick walkthrough, and then this is video 1. Video 2, we're going to actually work through the actual menus. So again, it's kind of what I showed you in the beginning. Everything is there, same as it was before. All the programs I showed you are still there, except this time the system is now installed on your hard drive, on this case a virtual machine, and is accessible and rebootable, and not a live CD. So there is the difference between a full installation viewing. You'll see no install folder here, which was here if you remember before. And so now we have concluded our installation of Skywave Linux, running now on a Oracle virtual machine. And that's all I got for you guys today. Stay tuned for part 2 of Skywave Linux. It could be multiple parts. In part 2, we'll take a look at setting up an SDR software defined radio. Thank you for joining me. KC7NYR. Take care.